Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and over the course of the past few weeks, we've talked a lot about Dimir Murktide in Modern. We've done a deck tech, where we've talked about the deck overall, how to play the deck, card choices in the deck. We've done a sideboard guide against the top 10 most popular decks. We've talked about flex slots and builds, and we've talked about tips, tricks, and nuances that you need to know whether you're playing or playing against Dimir Murktide. I wanted to combine all of those videos into one big, comprehensive deep dive. Enjoy.
All hail the psychic frog. All hail the psychic frog. All hail the psychic frog. All hail the psychic frog.
Dimir Murktide right now is, as I record this video, is the second most popular deck in Modern, and it is incredibly powerful. A couple big reasons why you might want to play this deck is that it has a ton of agency. There's so many decisions in the deck, whether it be what card you draw off of Preordain, what card you counterspell, what card you take out of your opponent's hand when you Thoughtseize, when you actually cast your threats. This deck very much rewards you for knowing what your opponent is playing and understanding the deck very, very, very well. It also similarly has a ton of interaction with your opponent. You're not playing the game by yourself and making your opponent react. You're the one dictating the pace of the game with how you cast your spells, remove your opponent's creatures, take stuff out of your opponent's hand when you decide it's time for you to lay on the gas. And alongside that, there's so many cards to choose from because you're drawing so many cards in the deck. It's not the most expensive deck in Modern, but it is a bit up there, sitting around $800 in paper, which is pretty rough. It's not expensive as like the most expensive decks, but it's certainly not cheap to be able to pick up, unfortunately. But it has quite a few good matchups. Has good matchups against Amulet Titan, Domain Zoo, Belcher, and Mill. However, has pretty bad matchups against Yawgmoth and Boros Energy, which can be a little rough because Boros Energy is a very popular deck. But if you feel like you can dodge the most popular deck, it has a good matchup against almost every other popular deck. So this is Dimir Murktide. Effectively, this is a tempo deck that's looking to one-for-one their opponent by countering spells, by killing creatures, by attacking their hand with Thoughtseize, and then taking over the game with undercosted but very, very powerful creatures. So let's go through this deck. Nothing really to look at in the mana base, just basic blue-black mana base, so we're going to kind of skip over that, but we are playing Preordain. It's a 1-mana sorcery, Scrytooth, and draw a card. This allows us to churn through our deck, puts instant sorceries in the graveyard for Murktide region, find the cards that we need. We're playing Spell Snare, so 1-mana instant, counter target spell, mana value 2. Most of the powerful cards in Modern at the moment are 2 mana, so this stops most powerful things that are happening. Playing 2 Tamiyo Inquisitive Student, so 1-mana 0/3 with flying. Whenever Tamiyo attacks, investigate. When you draw your third card in a turn, exile Tamiyo, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. And transforms into a planeswalker called Tamiyo Seasoned Scholar. It starts with 2 loyalty, and its +2 is until your next turn. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets a -1, -0 until end of turn. Its -3 is return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any color. Its -7 is draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library, rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. So it's a very powerful card that allows you to draw cards with your extra mana in the early game, and then it flips into a planeswalker that can totally take over the game. We're playing 4 Fatal Push, just the best removal spell in the format. It's 1-mana instant, destroy target creature, it's mana value 2 or less. Revolt, destroy that creature, it's mana value 4 or less instead of a permanent left of battlefield under your control this turn. It's very easy to do that in Modern with fetch lands and whatnot. We're playing 4 Thoughtseize to tear apart your opponent's hand. It's a 1-mana sorcery, target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card and you lose 2 life. It allows you to kind of choose what cards your opponent have and stop cards that are good against what you're attempting to do. We're playing 4 Counterspell, which kind of allows us to do that as well, except on the stack. 2 mana, instant, counter target spell. So allows us to 1-for-1 our opponents, be able to kind of take over the game, play at instant speed. Playing 4 Orcish Bowmasters. Orcish Bowmasters is a 2-mana 1/1 with flash. When this creature enters, and whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, this creature deals 1 damage to any target, then amass Orcs 1. So this is a way to play at instant speed and really punish your opponent for drawing extra cards. And also it's a creature that creates another creature and can just kill a 1 toughness creature. So that is also just very good. We're playing Fork Psychic Frog, probably the best card in the deck. It's a 2-mana 1/2. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card. So this allows to be combat damage if it goes unchecked. You can discard a card to put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, so you can cash in cards that you don't need. And you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard. This creature gains flying until end. We're playing 3 Force of Negation. Force of Negation is a 3-mana instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its spell's mana costs, and you can counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So it's a great way for us to be able to still interact with our opponent during their turn, even if we have 0 mana up. Really good against combo decks and whatnot. We're playing 2 Sink into Stupor. It's a 3-mana instant. Return target spell or non-land permanent opponent controls to its owner's hand. So just a cool way to interact for 3 mana. And also we can play it as a land on its other side. Playing 2 Dismember. It's 1 generic mana and 2 Phyrexian black. Target creature gets -5/-5 till end of turn. For effectively 1 mana, this allows us to interact some more and be a pretty powerful removal spell. Playing Sauron's Ransom. Sauron's Ransom is a 3-mana instant. Choose an opponent. They look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Then the ring tempts you, which the ring tempting you doesn't really matter in this deck. This allows us to play, again, at instant speed, get that card advantage that we want, be able to fill our graveyard at worst, which is great. We're playing 2 Subtlety. Subtlety is a 4-mana 3/3 with Flash Flying. When this creature enters, choose up to 1 target creature, spell, or planeswalker spell. Its owner puts it on their choice of top or bottom of their library, and we can evoke it and by exiling a blue card from our hand, which just means it gets sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. This allows us for 0 mana to be able to interact with our opponent's creatures and planeswalkers, but also be a threat while interacting with opponent's creatures and planeswalkers while playing at instant speed. We're playing 2 Kaido Bane of Nightmares, a 4-mana planeswalker that starts at 4 loyalty. However, it has Ninjutsu for 3 mana, which means when a creature is unblocked, you can turn that unblocked creature to the hand, and it is replaced by Kaido Bane of Nightmares. And during your turn, as long as Kaido has 1 or more loyalty counters on him, he is a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. And has planeswalker abilities of +1. You get an emblem with ninjas you control, get +1/+1, so it essentially pumps itself. 0 is Surveil 2, then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn. And its -2 is tap target creature, put 2 stun counters on it. So this makes it really hard for you to block this deck. This is a must answer because it allows you to effectively draw a card every turn, because you're dealing damage every turn. You can deal damage with Orcish Bowmaster or that Kaido or all of our evasive threats or whatever, because this is a planeswalker that can also attack. And then we're playing 3 Murktide Regent. Murktide Regent is a 7-mana 3/3 with Delve, which means you can exile cards from your graveyard while casting this spell, and each card exiled pays for 1 generic mana. So this can cost 2 mana if you exile 5 cards from your graveyard when casting it. It has flying, and this creature enters with +1/+1 counters on it for each instant sorcery card exiled with it. So playing all these instant sorcery cards that we put into our graveyard means that this can enter as effectively a 2-mana 7/7. And whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, which isn't super relevant besides your opponent trying to hate out your graveyard while you have this creature on the battlefield, or exiling cards from your graveyard with Psychic Frog can actually at instant speed pump Murktide Regent, which I'll talk about more in the tips and tricks video I do for this deck. Now, as far as the sideboard goes, we're playing 4 Consigned to Memory. This is a 1-mana instant, counter target triggered ability or colorless spell with Replicate 1. It's very good against Storm or Eldrazi decks or things like that. We're playing 3 Stern Scolding. It's a 1-mana instant, counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. Very good against like Energy or really any deck that is playing creatures with power toughness 2 or less. We're playing 3 Harbinger of the Seas. This is a 3-mana 2/2. Non-basic lands are islands. It's essentially a Blood Moon effect. It punishes your opponent for playing non-basic lands. Playing a Jace the Mind Sculptor. This is a 4-mana planeswalker that starts at 3 loyalty. Its +2 is look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card in the bottom of that player's library. Its 0 is draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand and top your library in any order. Its -1 is return target creature to its owner's hand, and its -12 is exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles their hand and put it into their library. This is just a very powerful planeswalker that allows us to like get an advantage against decks that have a hard time pressuring planeswalkers. Having those brainstorm effects with fetch lands, you know, is just ridiculous. We're playing the 3rd Subtlety in our board. We've already talked about why that's good. We can play that in the sideboard. We're playing a Meathook Massacre. Meathook Massacre is black, and X, legendary enchantment. When the Meathook Massacre enters, each creature gets -X till end of turn. And then it's an enchantment that whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you gain 1 life. Very good against go wide strategies. And then for our Graveyard Hate, we're playing Nihil Spellbomb as a 1-mana artifact. We can tap it to sacrifice this artifact, exile target player's graveyard. When this artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black. If you do, draw a card. So this is just awesome Graveyard Hate. And instant speed, and we don't really have to pay mana for it once it's on the battlefield, which is really, really nice. So this is Dimir Murktide. As far as the sideboard goes, Consign to Memory, very good against Storm and Eldrazi, and really anything with colorless or triggered abilities that actually matter. Stern Scolding, good against the creatures with toughness 2 or less out of like energy, and even the mirror match. Harbinger of the Seas is very good against the decks that rely on their lands to do the powerful things from their decks, like Amulet Titan or Eldrazi Ramp or things like that. Jace the Mind Sculptor is just like a solid mid-range card if the game is going to go long, can give you some crazy card advantage. Subtlety is good against decks that have creatures or planeswalkers that you need to answer and maybe need to answer at instant speed. The Meat Hook Massacre is our board wipe against the aggressive decks. Nihil Spellbomb is our Graveyard Hate. That being said, the most popular deck in Modern is Boros Energy. Against Boros Energy, we're bringing in the Stern Scoldings to be able to counter their powerful creatures. We're bringing in Meat Hook Massacre to be able to wipe their board. And Subtlety is really good, especially against a Flage that is escaping, which is pretty cool. We're going to be bringing out Force of Negation. It just doesn't really do anything against the deck. It's like fine against Fable and Goblin Bombardment, but 2-for-1ing ourselves is kind of a death knell. And then we're going to be cutting down on Kaido just because it's really easy for them to pressure these planeswalkers. There's an argument for bringing in the spell bombs and taking out maybe a Sauron's Ransom and maybe a Thoughtseize or something like that. However, I think these cards are really important for trying to get ahead. And Spellbomb isn't necessarily our only answer to Flage. We can answer them in other ways. So I don't like bringing it in, but I think it's totally fine too. This is how I sideboard against Energy. The second most popular deck in Modern is Eldrazi Ramp. Against Eldrazi, we're bringing in the Consign to Memories. We are bringing in Harbinger of the Seas because it can attack their lands. Then I'm a Spellbomb fan because if they ever Emrakul us, we are diggity dead. We're going to be taking out Dismember because it doesn't really kill anything that's relevant. Same thing with Fatal Push. Spell Snare only hits Rumble and the Talisman, which I don't think is enough to keep as a card in the deck. Or then we're going to cut Sauron's Ransom, and this is how I'm a sideboard against Eldrazi Ramp. The third most popular deck in Modern is the Mirror Match. In the mirror, I like Stern Scolding. This allows us to counter Frog and Bowmaster, even Tamio, which are all very, very important creatures, and countering them for 1 mana is a really big deal. Spellbomb's pretty good. It keeps Psychic Frog on the ground and Precious Murktide, being able to cast Murktide Regent. I like Jace because Jace is able to pull ahead once we have stabilized in that mirror match. I think Force of Negation is really bad because often this turns into like a mid-range fight, and we never want to 2-for-1 ourselves in mid-range fights like this. Similarly with Subtlety, I'm not a big fan of Subtlety in fighting this battle, and I like everything else in the deck quite a bit, so we're just going to shave a Preordain, and this is how I'm going to sideboard in the mirror. The fourth most popular deck is Ruby Storm. Against Ruby Storm, I like Consign. The reason Consign is good is it can hit Ruby Medallion, which is really nice, but also can counter the Storm trigger. Now Spellbomb is also very good because it makes it hard for them to combo because of Pass and Flames. And then Subtlety can counter Ral at 0 mana, which is a big deal because fighting this deck is just about making sure they don't hit their cost reducers and their cost reducers don't stick. That being said, we aren't playing the mid-range plan, so Kaido is bad. Sauron Ransom I don't like. We have to keep in the Fatal Pushes and the Dismembers just to be able to get Ral after it's already on the board. We're going to take out the Preordains, mostly because we need every single card in the deck to be doing something. We can't be spending mana on stuff that doesn't affect the board. And Shaven on a Murktide Regent because Ruby Storm's really fast and it's kind of hard to get to that end game if we don't have the tools to get to that end game. And so that's how I'm a sideboard against Ruby Storm. The fifth most popular deck is Amulet Titan. Against Amulet Titan, Consign is good because it can hit Amulet, which is really nice, but also can counter the triggered abilities of most things in the deck, which is also super nice. Harbinger of the Seas is great. It turns off the combo with their lands. Subtlety can slow them down because you can counter the creature. Fatal Push, frankly, doesn't kill anything consistently enough. Spell Snare is just terra bad. Orcish Bowmasters doesn't really kill anything. And it doesn't draw cards, or the opponent's deck doesn't draw cards besides Spelunking and Explore, so meh. So we're going to bring out some number of Orcish Bowmasters, because at least it does something, where Spell Snare and Fatal Push actually just do nothing. In this, I'm a sideboard against Amulet Titan. The sixth most popular deck is Belcher. And mono red Belcher is actually getting pretty popular alongside blue Belcher. And you're going to sideboard slightly different against both of them. What you're going to bring in against both of them, though, is Consign. It counters Belcher, which is a really big deal. Against the red version, it counters Ruby Medallion as well. And you just straight up need to play those cards. Against the red version, actually, it counters the Storm trigger from Storm Talon Scion as well. You got to bring out Subtlety because it just doesn't do anything to speak of. Same thing with pushes and dismembers. They just really don't do anything. So now we're in a situation where we need to bring out too many cards, which is not the best situation. So against the red version, bringing in Harbinger is kind of cute because you can kind of turn off some of their colors, and then we can just keep a Subtlety in. And so this is how I would sideboard against the red version of Belcher. Against the blue version, obviously Harbinger isn't as good, so unfortunately we got to keep one of the subtleties in. And then against the blue version, there are still some cards we have to take out. Like we have to take out the fatal pushes and dismembers because they just straight up don't do anything, which means we have to bring in some other cards that are not as good, like Subtlety at least as a creature, and Jace the Mind Sculptor actually has text where these cards just don't. So that's how I'd sideboard against the blue Belcher version. The 7th most popular deck is Domain Zoo. Against Domain Zoo, we're bringing in Meat Hook Massacre. If we can get to the mana, being able to kill the creatures with Meat Hook Massacre is pretty cute. Harbinger turns off their mana. Their mana is very, very, very greedy. And Subtlety just to slow down their aggression. We're going to be taking out some of these long-term cards, like Force Negation is just bad. Kaido we kind of have to take out because we're not going to be attacking too much until we've stabilized. And so that's how I'm a sideboard against Domain Zoo. The 8th most popular deck is It Prowess. Against the Is It Prowess deck, Stern Scolding is solid because it counters all of their creatures. Meat Hook Massacre being able to wipe their board, especially after a Quarry Steelcutter, feels really good as well. And Subtlety just being able to slow their creatures down is like a pretty big deal. That being said, I think we have to side out a Thoughtseize just because the deck is so fast, and then a Kaido. And that's how I'm going to sideboard against Is It Prowess. The 9th most popular deck is Affinity. Against Affinity, we're bringing in the Consigns. Being able to counter things here or there as they become relevant is a pretty big deal, especially being able to counter triggered abilities like from Emery or Thought Monitor are also really solid too. Stern Scolding counters all of their creatures besides Kappa Cannoneer, which is really solid. And then I like Subtlety as well. It doesn't hit a lot of the relevant things in their deck, and it hits very few of the relevant things. Spell Snare does straight up nothing against them. And we're going to shave on Force Negation. There's not a lot of non-creature spells we're willing to 2-for-1 ourselves over, but they exist, like fighting over Metallic Rebuke or Thoughtcast or something. So I'm a sideboard against Affinity. Then the 10th most popular deck is the Basking Brood Scale deck. Against Basking Brood Scale, we're bringing in Consigns. It counters about half of the cards in the 75, which is sweet. Stern Scolding also counters pretty much everything except for Emrakul. Subtlety, being able to slow their creatures down so there's less of a chance of comboing, is really solid. And I'm always a fan of Harbinger and taking out Urza Sagas. That being said, we're going to be taking out a lot of the slower stuff. Not a big fan of forcing counter. A lot of things we're really afraid of are instant speed, like Kozilek's Command and whatever. So taking those out is really solid. Also, Smell Snare only counters Basking Brood Scale, so I think we have to take that out as well. And Orcish Bowmasters doesn't really kill anything, and also they're not drawing cards. So we're going to shave on Orcish Bowmasters, and the Sama sideboard against Brood Scale. This is not what we're talking about today. This is your non-flex slots in Dimir Murktide. If you're playing Dimir Murktide, you are pretty much signed up for playing these 53 cards in the main deck and these 6 cards in the sideboard. So when you decide to make your deck, the question is, what are the 7 cards are you playing in the main deck? And what are the 9 cards you're playing in the sideboard? Well, here are your reasonable options. You're going to pick 7 cards of these 13, and you're going to pick 9 of these 15 cards to have your very own but stock version of Dimir Murktide. So you could play the 4th Preordain. Preordain's 1-mana sorcery, scry 2, then draw a card. This allows you to kind of push through your deck, makes you easily put instant sorceries in the graveyard for a big old Murktide, and kind of filter your draws while also replacing itself. You play Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce, 1-mana instant, counter target non-creature spell, unless controller pays 2. Very good, really cheap interaction against non-creatures. Great for fighting counterspell wars and against combo decks. Spell Snare is a 1-mana instant, counter target spell with mana value 2. The way Modern is right now, most of the extremely powerful cards in Modern are 2 mana, so this counters a lot of those. You play into the Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize, 1-mana sorcery, target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card, you lose 2 life. This allows you to sort of select what cards your opponent has to choose from to play and really control the cards that are played in the game, which is very, very powerful. Play up to 2 Shoot the Sheriff, 2-mana instant, destroy target non-outlaw creature. This is probably the best 2-mana removal, at least black and generic removal in Modern. It's a Doomblade effect, has always been very good, and there's not a lot of outlaws that are playable. 3-mana instant, if it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. This is absolutely excellent against combo decks. Not very good against decks you're looking to grind with, because 2 for 1 yourself feels really bad, but being able to stop other people's combos for 0 mana is very important. You play another Sink into Stupor. This MDFC card on the front is 3-mana instant, return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. And the back is a land that enters tapped unless you pay 3 life. That's a blue land. This is pretty powerful because not only does it help us hit our land drops, but also 3 mana to return a spell or non-land permanent to its owner's hand is like not bad. Play up to Dismember. Dismember is 3 mana, 1 generic and 2 Phyrexian black. Instant. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. This is a way that it's very painful. It costs a lot of life. It doesn't have to because we do produce black mana in this deck. But 1 mana, -5/-5, 1 mana kill pretty much everything in Modern. You play a Sauron's Ransom. It is a 3-mana instant. Choose an opponent. They look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard. The ring tempts you. The ring tempts you literally doesn't matter. But what this is this allows you to get pretty good card advantage at instant speed, so you can keep mana open for kill spells or counter spells or what have you while you still churn through your deck and get really good cards. You play another Subtlety. Subtlety is a 4-mana creature. It's a 3/3 with flash and flying. When this creature enters, choose up to 1 target creature spell or planeswalker spell. Its owner puts it their choice at the top or bottom of their library, and we can evoke it by exiling a blue card from our hand. So we can cast it for essentially free by exiling a blue card from our hand. However, it's sacrificed once it enters. So this is free as far as mana goes, countering target creature spells or planeswalker spells, which is very good. But then if we have the mana open, we can get rid of them and have a threat, which is really powerful. And then we can play Kaito Bane of Nightmares. Kaito Bane of Nightmares is a 4-mana planeswalker that starts at 4 loyalty, however has ninjutsu for 3 mana, and during your turn, as long as Kaito has 1 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. So it's +1 is you get an emblem with ninjas you control get +1/+1, which is itself 0 is surveil 2, then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn, and -2 tap target creature, put 2 stun counters on it. So this is a great way to push damage through, a great way to draw additional cards and divert your opponent's attention. Also being able to return things like Orcish Bowmasters with the ninjutsu to be able to like kill additional creatures of your opponents is really, really powerful. So you're going to be selecting 7 of these 13 cards for your main deck, and then let's look at the sideboard. We can play an additional Consign to Memory. Consign to Memory is a 1-mana instant with Replicate for 1 generic and counter target triggered ability or colorless spell. Very good against Eldrazi, decent against Belcher, decent against Storm, fine against Amulet even. This like really like neuters a lot of decks if you have them, so playing the 4th is pretty decent. You can play up to 3 Stern Scolding. Stern Scolding is a 1-mana instant counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. Very powerful against the energy decks and like the black-white deck and stuff like that. Pretty decent in the mirror too, actually, being able to take out Orcish Bowmasters, the Psychic Frog and whatnot. You can play up to 2 Mystical Dispute. Mystical Dispute's a 3-mana instant. The spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. So this is a great way to win Counter Wars. Be able to interact for 1 mana against blue decks is super, super powerful. You can play 2 additional Harbinger of the Seas. It's a 3-mana 2/2 non-basic lands or islands, which is very, very good against decks that rely on their lands to either produce additional mana or whatever, or even Urza Saga decks. So very good against like Titan because they have lands that produce 2 mana plus they're an Urza Saga deck. Very, very good against Eldrazi, you know, and whatnot. You can play Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace the Mind Sculptor is a 4-mana planeswalker that starts at 3 loyalty. Its +2 is look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card in the bottom of that player's library. Its 0 is draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of their library in any order. -1, return target creature to its owner's hand. And -12 is exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles their hand into their library. So its ultimate is obviously a just win. +1, you can filter your opponent's draws, but it's not very good in Modern because of fetch lands. They can just reshuffle. It's 0 allows you to brainstorm. You draw 3 cards and put 2 cards you don't want on top of your deck. Ideally, this is comboed with a shuffle effect like a fetch land. So it effectively becomes draw 3 cards and then can get things out of the way with the -1. Extremely powerful. We've already talked about why you'd play Subtlety, just maybe in the sideboard. You play Toxic Deluge. Toxic Deluge is a 3-mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. Great board wipe. You have to pay life, which is a little awkward, but also it's reasonably unconditional. Like, you can pay as much life as you want. If I talked about Kaido, we could play that in the board. Play an additional Nihil Spell Bomb, so 1-mana artifact. We can tap it and sacrifice it and exile target player's graveyard, and when this artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black if you do draw cards. So this allows it to replace itself, but also graveyard hate just for 1 mana. Doesn't matter what color it is. That can just sit on the battlefield until it's relevant. Is pretty good. And then you can play up to 2 Engineered Explosives. It is X cost artifact with Sunburst, where it enters with a charge counter for each color of mana spent to cast it. And you pay 2 mana and sacrifice it. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on this artifact. Really, really good against decks that produce a lot of tokens, or decks that have a lot of cards of the same mana cost, or things that you really, 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 really need to have an answer to, or you lose. But very, very powerful card. So you're going to select 9 of these 15 cards, 7 of these 13 cards, and then you'll have your very own but stock version of Dimir Murktide in Modern. And we're going to start with Psychic Frog being able to pump Murktide at instant speed. So Psychic Frog has this ability where you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard. Psychic Frog gains flying until end of turn. Murktide says that whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide region. So at instant speed, you can give Psychic Frog flying, and if you exile instants and sorceries, it triggers Murktide region and makes Murktide region even bigger. Speaking of Murktide region, if you're casting 2 in the same turn, have the first one be exiling non-instants and sorceries, and then the second one exile instants and sorceries. So let's pretend you have 5 instant sorceries in your graveyard. You cast the first one and it's a 3/3, and then you exile 5 instant sorceries with the second one. It triggers Murktide region that's already on the battlefield and makes it an 8/8, and the one that's coming onto the battlefield is an 8/8. Where if you exile sorceries of the first one, and it's an 8/8 when it comes on the battlefield, and then you exile a bunch of non-instant sorceries of the second one, it just comes on the battlefield as a 3/3, and then the one that's already on the battlefield doesn't get pumped up. If you play Orcish Bowmasters while your opponent has hexproof, which happens sometimes, and there's no other good target for it, you can actually target the army token. Even if the army is a 1/1, the ability has to fully resolve, which means that it'll deal the damage, and yeah, that's lethal damage, but then it'll be pumped up to a 2/2 before the ability fully resolves. It avoids you having to target Orcish Bowmasters with a self, or target you, or something crazy like that. And then this is true with every Kaido Bane of Nightmares deck. When you ninjutsu with Kaido and return a creature to your hand, try to return a creature that has a beneficial enter the battlefield effect, like Orcish Bowmaster or Subtlety. And being able to reset that can give you some really incredible card advantage and leverage on your opponent, even if they know about it. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.